Hello everyone, it's Lordad. We hit 15,000 subscribers and I am very happy. Thank you very much for your support. It seems like every milestone of like 5,000 subscribers doing a Q&A. I just felt like I wanted to do one. It's been 2 years since I uploaded my first video to the channel, so while it might not be the 20k that I was initially thinking about doing an next Q&A on, I felt like a good excuse. 15k subs, 2 years. So yeah, let's just get into it. So everybody asked a lot of different questions. Thank you for that. I did do a voting system, but I might just end up mostly ignoring them for the most part. Like, there are some pretty good questions in here, including one by Sir Magistel Imperial about like this thing I've never heard about. Like, what is it? I'll see if I can find it here. The OGAS. Yeah, I'm really interested in that. I don't really have the time right now. Maybe if I do have time to look into that, I'd mention it, but I'm just going to go ahead with the things that I feel like the community are been asking about most for the last while, so I'll just get into it now. So is Talons and Twilight still a thing? So I had some people asking if you're gonna actually do it. Like, in the community post where I was announcing this thing, everyone was asking if it was happening. Long story short, I had a lot of writer's block when it came to how to make the visuals and the story the best. There's a Hearts of Iron 4 mod in development for Talons and Twilight, which has actually been really remarkable. I let them have a lot of free reign for a while, and I let them do their own adjustments to the lore, because these are veterans of like 3 nation role plays that all involved all these same people. They have a really intimate understanding of the way that the geopolitics sort of naturally end up with the situation that I made. And they also found some like plot holes in my initial scenario. So while I've been like resisting certain suggestions, like having Brittany be controlled by South France instead of North France, there have been adjustments made to other things, like making sure that the Nepalese lore is accurate. Like, for example, there's a lot of little itty-bitty things like that that aren't too consequential, but are still important in the grand scheme of things. So I had the idea of, instead of the visuals being my usual QBAM style, instead it'll all be Hearts of Iron 4 visuals. So that would require me to directly collaborate with the developer team, and it started to happen. And I also then had a problem of like trying to incorporate their changes to the lore with what I was writing. So long story short, I've been chipping away at it. It's going to take a long time to produce. There are other surprises that I want to have fully worked out before I go. The absolute last time that I would try to get it done is a year from now, and I know that's significantly hard to even wrap your head around. I don't want it to take that long. But it would, if I had to really consider it and think about what I would do and why I would do it. But when it comes to like what it really means to me, is that this isn't just another Lordad video. It's a celebration of my first series that really put my channel on the map, and all those other really creative things that you guys have done. And I want to make sure that it's right for everybody and everyone's satisfied and happy. So I'm taking my time with it to make sure that it's right. And I'm sorry if that has caused a lot of people to be anticipating something for a really long time, but yeah, I am interested in it still, but it's complicated to do. TLDR. So, and there was another message about the 10,000 subscribers event. So this is a really complicated story, so strap in. So Likgas approached me with the idea of doing a 10k subscriber special involving the community, and I agreed to it. But at that time of my life, I had never been sicker. I cannot describe to you how sick I was, beyond like very, very terrible thing. I don't know if you've heard of the Aura ring, but I had it. I was wearing it, and it measured my readiness, which usually is like your general health in general. Just don't worry about the specifics. You can look it up if you want to. But I had, like, once when I was hospitalized for perimyocarditis, which is like the inflammation of the inner and outer tubes of your heart. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. There was no underlying health issue. That readiness on that day was like 30, but the days that I was sick, one of them, it was readiness 12. So I probably could have gone into the hospital for what I had, but I didn't. So I was with my family. We were all sick in our own ways. I swear to God, like the Bluey music sounded slower somehow. I don't know how that happened, but it did, and it was scary. Like the perception of time was just crazy. Long story short, I literally forgot that during the time I was sick, everybody had gotten together to make a bunch of scenarios and put it together in a video. I don't really remember what happened with that. I'm pretty sure that if it is not on public channels, it's archived somewhere I can see. If it's not and it got deleted, that really fucking sucks. Whoever won it, let me know, because I am interested in doing this video. I think it's important to follow through with my promises, even if I don't remember even giving it. I just honestly completely forgot. I was so caught up with all these other things I had to do. Enough excuses though. I want to make it right. I do want to get the video there, and I want it to be not just a 10K thing where it features a video, but I think it was like the South. I can't remember what it was. The Constitution banned slavery in the South. I can't remember exactly, but I have my own opinion on that scenario, which I would make into my like accompaniment. It's like, this is what this viewer thought. I agree with some things. If I did it this way, it'd be that way. Anyway, thanks for participating. That would be the general format of the video. So yeah, I do want to do it. Yeah, that's all. Genuinely got so sick that I completely forgot. So I'm sorry if that disappointed anybody, but I do have intentions to make it right. There's also a question about series, like what's my next big project? So I'll be completely honest, the amount of effort it takes for a long form project like that compared to how fun and easy it is in comparison to make a video about a Hearts of Iron 4 mod that's dead or alive, especially when it's dead and I don't need to worry about stepping on toes, makes it really hard for me to consider doing a project again, because it's really hard to know if a project is going to do well. I can't. The fact that Stressa did so well when it's 15 episodes long is like insane to me. I tried to capture that same success with Bourbon in German October, but it did not, I don't think, have the same impact that the other videos that I've recently made, like Atlanta Europa was the Soul of the New Order, and the lore review of Twilight Struggle, and the lore grave of Krasnacht. So I am interested in making a project. I'm not going to discount it completely. For example, I want to make a what if Germany won World War One, and it's not going to be a standalone video. That would be a project. But when it comes to like researching for the project, I don't have too much knowledge about World War One stuff and the early interwar, so it's hard for me to really commit to something like that. I'll consider trying to make a project and working away at it every once in a while. Another one is like a Southern victory in the American Civil War, but that could just be its own standalone video. But yeah, as of right now, until Talons and Twilight is solidified, at least the script, and not even the visuals, but the script, I'm not interested in making a long form project like that. But I'm not against it either. So yes, but not right now, basically. One of the reasons why I'm so apprehensive starting a project is what happened with Project Germania. I was really excited about it initially, but when I started to really get into the nitty-gritties of what it meant for an Axis victory to happen, it was really depressing. If I do make a part 4 in Germania, I won't make a movie out of it, and it would just be like and yes, it would really suck if the Germans won World War II. This is how bad it could be. But the mental fatigue of having a bunch of Nazis showing up in my chat and then telling me, no, it would be based. No, fuck off. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want those people to have anything to do with my community. And that was just getting people involved in that and interested in that. I'm not interested in that. So I'm sorry if people liked Project Germania, but I would say that that's just completely canceled. I'm not doing that again. Emerald Wesley asks, regarding the naval aspects of alternate history scenarios, how do I research them? Basically, I don't. It's just vibes. And I'm sorry if that disappoints, but when it came to the Navy stuff and Project Stressa, it was just like, okay, well, I know Hearts of Iron 4 Navy sizes generally, so I'll go off of that. And then when it came to Project Bourbon, it was pretty easy because, especially German October and Bourbon, it was really easy because the British Navy just beats everyone else. So It could be interesting to have a naval-based alternate history, like a pirate republic or something, and look into how that would all work out. But as of right now, yeah, I really just go off of vibes. And this kind of goes into actually the last question that really popped out to me while I was looking at everything. It was a video by The Quick Rundown. Alternate history fails to describe the absurdity of life. So what he's saying, and he's taking the position that most people do, his understanding of alternate history is that people are like, this is the most reasonable and most plausible timeline, and it's the most realistic thing that would have happened if this alternate future or this alternate decision was made. And he's like, well, if you're doing that, you might as well be writing fiction, because history in real life is bad writing. I would recommend the video. I'll link it right now. Like, it's such a good video, even if it's 2 minutes long, so you can do it. But my response effectively to this video is, yes, people should be, when they're writing alternate history, be writing fantasy stories, because alternate history is fiction. It's not going to be anything but. History is something that happened in real life. Real life is unpredictable, and it's not well written. It's another thing that's been covered by a lot of writers. Stories aren't actually things. Simulating games of EU4 don't actually simulate history. Like, there's reality and then there's fiction. And alternate history, while it's based in some level of reality because it's based off of history, which even is like controversial, like, oh, well, history cannot even be exactly what happened, and there's a bunch of debates about all that stuff. Yeah, 100%. It's not real history. It's fiction, and it should be just treated like that. So while it could be interesting to look into Navy stuff and be like, oh, these boats are cool, and this is what the specs of this ship would be if this happened, like, what if the naval treaty like was different, that everybody did, and limited the size of their big battleships or whatever the exact treaty was. I just feel like for me, I don't have much of a care for Navy, even though the Navy is a really interesting thing. Like, even Lord Boy has been looking at pictures of naval carriers and stuff. I just don't really consider it. I don't really research it. So sorry if that's a disappointment question wise, but. So Inferno, thank you for all your help on the Talons and Twilight mod. Has asked him 3 questions, and I'll answer all of them because I'm a nice guy. So the first question, he's wondering about like what sort of stuff I did as a game designer. So I don't think I'm bound by a lot of NDAs, but I don't want to dox myself, so I'll try to keep it as vague as possible. As I mentioned in the Tino video, I wasn't necessarily a game designer that you might think of the dream job. I was doing like mobile games, and it wasn't the good mobile games either. They were the ones that were like deliberately like getting you addicted to a specific behavior pattern and then elongating the dopamine release for that. So like idle games where you build the buildings and then they make more money, but then the level after that is harder, but harder means just longer. So then you're waiting longer to get the dopamine release that you have been conditioned to want. So then you are more likely to pay money. So that was my job. I was the guy trying to get you to pay your microtransactions to big companies. So you can understand why I was actually kind of glad when the last company I was working for downsized and gave me an opportunity to consider changing careers. I could have potentially gone into game design for other larger companies that weren't doing just mobile games. But at that time, it was during the big downsizing the video game industry, where because of the pandemic and the bubble that happened because of that, there's just been a big drop in game design stuff. So I'm doing this now. But yeah, basically I'm not able to really give any more insight into that. So basically it's not that great. I do have a game design background. I was educated and I was paid to be a professional game designer, but I was not using the skills to make the games that we might love and enjoy. However, that doesn't discount the clout of actually literally being paid to do it in the past. So I hope that answers it without it being like pirate software levels of grift. When I started my involvement with the Hearts of Iron 4 scene, when did I start? So my first was actually Cult of Krieg, and that's why I have such a large fascination for it and love for it. I started as a Kaiserreich tester, and that actually lended to me getting a job in QA, because I was able to go up to an employer and be like, yeah, so I've already been doing QA. In fact, I've been logging tickets for people overseas to fix. And it turns out that they had a studio in another European country, and they're like, oh, that's exactly what we need. So I think that actually probably got me the job, to be honest. And that's just one thing to mention. You guys are Hearts of Iron 4 modders. You guys are writers. Don't discount the fact that you're literally making stuff in a mod. If you are a Hearts of Iron 4 modder, you could go up to any game developer who's hiring and tell them that you taught yourself with videos or documentation another company's in-game engine's internal syntax to be able to make your own experiences. That's one of the biggest things that you can do. Like, if you're going to be brought onto a team of people making a project, the last thing that they want to do is teach you everything that you need to know about how to actually work there. That's one of the biggest things that they need. That's one of the reasons why there's so many people in the industry instead of people coming into the industry, is that they know that those people know how to do that stuff already. So I would recommend anybody, if you're watching this, feature your mod work on your videos. I think even the TNO lead writer from after and before it released managed to get jobs because he could put it on his resume that he managed like 100 different individual writers to keep a coherent storyline. And that's a huge thing to put in your resume. So don't discount your own work. Anyway, yeah, it was Cult of Krieg, and then I started getting involved in other people's mods instead of just Cold War stuff. I would give my opinions on Canada, and then I started giving more opinions on a bunch of other things that people didn't care about. And then I started to go, ugh, you don't understand what I'm trying to say. Let me put it in a map for you. And then I just started to make my own things and my own maps, and then it got way out of hand. And then I realized all this hobbying stuff could turn into a YouTube channel, and now we're here at 15,000 subscribers. Yeah, I don't know what the big takeaway is for that, but just thought I'd mention it. Favorite obscure historical event. I haven't mentioned a video before. I can't really think of any specific event. All I know is that Abraham Lincoln exchanged like a telegram with Karl Marx once or twice. I thought that was really cool because it puts into perspective like what was actually happening. Like if you think about Marx and you think about Lincoln as different eras of history almost, if you don't know the dates, but they would have been able to communicate with each other. And there was another thing about like how like a bunch of really prominent figures would have all been alive at the same time, even if they're really old or brand new. And it's really interesting to think like what sort of people alive today are going to be the subject of that did you know, right? So that's the only thing I can really think of. It's just one cool thing about history that I like. What happened to AOTR2 and why am I not covering it? I don't have any personal gripes with the people who are making AOTR2. However, I was just having debates, and the debates weren't really debates anymore. They were just conflicts. Like, I thought that the mod direction should go one way, and then somebody else thought it should go the other way, and the sort of disregard for my opinion made me realize, hey, you know what? Instead of just debating people about how Hearts of Iron 4 mod should be designed, I'll just design them myself. So I didn't cut ties per se. I wouldn't say that I wouldn't do another AOTR video in the future, but I don't really see much point in it right now when there's so much other stuff going on. Maybe I'll do a lore review if it ever comes out, but yeah, so so there's no beef with the Jubs or anybody else on the AOTR team. If you're interested in what they're cooking, I would recommend you work for them, but it's just not for me. Just not putting any more brain power into it. Sorry if that's not the best answer that you were hoping for, but yeah. Haas is asking, do I plan on making a video about hype or teaser slop? Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I actually think that it's not that's anybody's intention is to make teaser slop. I think there was one instance where it was like sense of security, And that was just a meme of Hearts of Iron 4 mods. And it stopped when a bunch of people started saying that their mods were going to go into Vic 3, even though Vic 3 wasn't announced yet. It was just one big shitpost, and that was funny. And maybe I'll cover that. But I think when I eventually talk about Hearts of Iron 4 modding and why most die, I think the first thing I'll say is the teasers are usually the rate of development. People are so excited to share what they've worked on that they make it into a teaser. So while in some cases there might actually be developers who have the self-control not to reveal everything that they have planned, usually the teasers are the rate of development. And even in that case, the focus trees that they're showing off don't have any effects, and they won't have any effects because they'll forget to code them in after they made the teaser, because they want their Discord to grow in viewers instead of actually making a mod. And there's plenty of such cases. So, but yeah. Question 2 is, in your personal experience working in a Hearts of Iron 4 mod, what generally makes a mod get canceled, and how do these situations be fixed so that the mod doesn't get canceled and actually ends up releasing? I think that the biggest thing that happens with Hearts of Iron 4 mods is that there's the initial idea of the scenario. People brainstorm about it, and then they have conflicting ideas on how it should be done, and this is never properly addressed on what the central vision of it is. And then you get cliques, quote unquote cliques, of at least 2 different groups of people who want different things for the mod, and then they group together and they have debates, and the debates turn into fights, and then half of the mod team leaves, or if they are immature then they leak it to the public, and then the fun is spoiled and everything falls apart. So I think that's the most common thing. And in a way, me making those AOTR videos is me trying to make sure that the lore of AOTR 2 didn't get stuck in lore redevelopment hell, where it just kept changing over and over again, and everything that had to be, and that everything that was in the game itself had to be reworked to suit the new lore. And it's something that I picked up from my Culture Creed days, where the Kaiserreich reworks just made everything go to shit. So I would say that it had a good effect on AOTR, but I don't know what they're doing. I haven't checked the Discord in a long time, so hopefully it has let them not have a bunch of lore reworks, or if they did do a lot of lore reworks, it just adds extra depth to the scenario. But that's basically it. It's just that people don't have a unified vision, or it's just a bunch of idea guys. Usually the mods that end up succeeding have one idea guy and one modder who are friends, or one person that does everything, and then people who like the idea get involved. And if people are getting involved, there needs to be some level of administration to pull everything together, like the Pink Panzer, who I don't remember what their new name is. I know that she's trans now, but the leader of the TNO mod managed to get the mod actually out because of how hard-headed they were. So a lot of people didn't like their direction. They were controversial in many ways. It wouldn't have come out if people were debating everything now. Like, you look at TNO and how slowly are developing things. The only things that get added into TNO are things that people put into it as a sub-mod instead of developing the mod. If you want something to get added to TNO, make a sub mod and then get integrated. But good luck. You need to agree with everything they do. And it's just increasing the quote unquote reformist clique's power. Can go on forever. But Tino is basically in a really long stagnant period. And I would even say if anybody makes a big post on Reddit saying, why is development so slow? That's like the biggest indicator that the mod is dead. Because as soon as the developers admit to everyone else that it's dead, then it's basically just like a dead flag, right? So anyway, I hope that answered the question. I did ramble a lot, but that's what people know me for. So what advice would I give to people who are trying to make alternate histories or general world building projects? The biggest thing is that alternate history is fiction, and you cannot make it not fictional because it did not happen in real life. History itself is not exactly what happened. It's our best guess to make a narrative out of the events that we see. But even the way that we perceive events changes the way that we view history. People are fans of history. They are fans of the historical whatever of everything that's happened. And that's good. And you can pull on historical events like George R.R. Martin did with the Lannisters versus the Starks in as a parallel for as a parallel to English history and all these other things. And yeah, just be creative, write well, but don't be concerned about writing well initially. The worst thing to work with is a blank page. Don't be afraid to embrace your own creativity. What's my process in making alternate history scenarios? So I actually have a video about how to alternate history, and I kind of go over it. I have a general idea of the scenario that I want to explore. So say, what if Germany won World War One? And then I work backwards to try to find a single point divergence that would make that possible, despite any other butterfly effects that may happen from that point divergence. So Germany may have won World War One, but if the point divergence gives the USA a Great Depression early, then maybe the USA is also socialist. And it makes the entire world a lot easier to develop. So instead of relying purely on creativity, you're able to follow a mainline event of historical events that you can then answer the divergences always with the primary point of divergence. So in Project Stresa, it was because Austria united with Germany in 1919. So Japan bombs Pearl Harbor, America joins the Axis. Why did America join the Axis? Because the Japanese were on the Saxon Allies side. Why is it the Saxon Allies? Germany and Britain are allies. Why are Germany and Britain allies? Because when Austria united with Germany in 1919, it pissed off Italy and France instead of just France. So France and Italy both were trying to set up secessionist republics, which caused them to bind together. And then a event that happened in real history, instead of it being a almost right-wing coup, it becomes a right-wing coup. So the Latin Axis are fighting the British. The British need allies against the French in Indochina. They get Japan, and Japan bombs Pearl Harbor because the USA would still be supporting China. And that's one of the reasons why Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. And while, yeah, maybe it's not plausible, it was a much more interesting scenario for the fact that America then starts going down the path of fascism. And even Charles Lindbergh's eventual inauguration in 1949 is only possible due to the point of divergence in 1919, 30 years. But I'm still able to make a direct correlation with the main point divergence. So that's my take on it. You can watch my video on it. I'll see if I can make another how to alternate history soon. What are the best alternate history scenarios in my opinion? I really liked that Wizards and Warriors, which is like the second channel to like General Tactics or something. I forget. Kings and Generals. Yeah, it's the secondary channel to Kings and Generals, and they did an alternate history about the Mongol invasion actually coming to Europe. And it was so awesome. And the reason why is because of how hard it went into fiction. Well, the only thing that I would have a gripe with is the Venetians making their own strain of Christianity after Rome gets pillaged. Spoilers. I think that otherwise it's an amazing scenario. And I even considered doing my own, like, quote unquote, continuation of it. Could even be an interesting EU5 mod. But the fact that the timeline of the invasion is so close to the start date of EU5 instead of EU4. So yeah, maybe that's just a topic for a future video. Thanks for that, Smart Raven. I'll put that on my to-do list. Any tips for people looking to write or use alternate history in their works? So I think that the biggest thing is to not be afraid to look into conventional writing advice, because alternate history is fiction, so it needs to follow. So it's best to use the lessons of fiction writers in order to best make your own scenario the best. So there's this YouTuber who is currently under a huge mental breakdown, which is really unfortunate. There's a entire archive of 63 videos of all of his old screenwriting advice videos that I recommend. There's like 5 rules of how to write well, and one of them was don't stop the dominoes ever. And that's exactly what I would say to anybody who's doing alternate history stuff, is don't let the dominoes stop. If you're trying to make an alternate history where somebody just wins, like the title of What If Everything Went Right for Germany is interesting, and those types of videos that Possible History makes are good. But I wouldn't say that it's a alternate history narrative. So you shouldn't have a protagonist when you go into an alternate history, because then it just causes problems. In fact, that might even be why Germania had problems, or Project Bourbon wasn't as good as it could have been. Is that there's a protagonist. So the biggest thing that works, especially for alternate history writing, is don't let the dominoes stop. Don't have a favorite character, and let the course of action just come out as the way it goes. Favorite genre of music? I don't know. I just end up playing a lot of video game music, a lot of anime music. Basically, Japanese composers make the best stuff. I don't really have any other genre for that, unfortunately. Hope has a good question for number one. I don't really know, unfortunately. I don't know much about Finnish history. But the second one, if the Reds won the Finnish Civil War, would they have joined the USSR? Yes, because Lenin wasn't thinking about the USSR as a successor to Russia. It was just the workers' state that started in Russia. So while Finland had some integration with Russia because of the Grand Duchy of Finland or whatever, and you could argue that that's an extension of the typical Russian Eurasian area, I do think that they would have joined the USSR. There might even be some documentation that says that they would have. But I think even the USSR's official narrative for the annexation of the Baltic is that they had communist revolutions there, and then they immediately petitioned to join the USSR. So even if the Red Finns may not have even wanted that, it would have just ended up being like that anyway. So the interesting thing about a scenario like that is that like Sweden may become Finland's liberator, but if they're fascist enough, they might even just annex it. So there's no hope for Finland. But yeah, thanks for the question. Why do I do alternate history? The reason why I do alternate history is that I was put into a situation where after my job had fallen through, I was like, hey, I need it to be something that I can do flexible so that I can be there with my kids and hopefully something that I enjoy. So all those things together, including my previous skills I learned at education for things that eventually led me becoming a game designer, it just made sense to do alternate history. Like if I'm going to have videos to make, why not do videos about the things that I've already written about, right? So that's why I do alternate history in that way. Otherwise, I just think that alternate history is a really interesting way to learn about history. It reflects our own life and our own world back at us for us to consider and contemplate. Will I ever do a face reveal? I don't think I ever will. Like maybe after the year 3, maybe if we hit a certain amount of numbers. I don't know. I do have a pretty good looking face, so yeah, for now I'm just going to stay faceless. It just protects my family's privacy more. Westminster Project, I already talked about that. And can I make a series about if Jonathan Swift declared independence for Ireland? I don't even know who Jonathan Swift is. Have I ever considered creating my own world and not alternate history, but a new planet and continents and countries? I did a little bit of like a world building thing way back before I thought even about alternate history. Maybe I could revive it again. I don't know. But I just like alternate history more because every time I make alternate geography, it just feels weird. So there's not much point to it. Just don't want to be struggling with that. What's my opinion of I mentioned it earlier actually. And how good would Hearts of Iron 4 really be without mods? I actually don't play modded Hearts of Iron 4 that much, and I think it's a great game. It seems kind of crazy to consider because of how good modded stuff is, but in some ways the modded stuff isn't really balanced that well, and then it just doesn't end up being a good gameplay experience. And conversely, historical mode off, playing vanilla Hearts of Iron 4 is always a good experience in my mind. If you're playing an outdated country with all 70-day focuses, which aren't that bad, but then it could be kind of bad. Japan is a little lackluster in that regard, but they're going to be updated soon. So no, it's actually pretty good. There's like gameplay elements of like making everybody be able to go every ideology despite the implausibility and how hard it would be to achieve all those things in a very limited amount of time, and then having a big world war over it and somehow and it never works out properly. That isn't the best part about Hearts of Iron 4, but the best part is when you play historical, but then you affect the world slightly and then everything else falls into place for an interesting dynamic gameplay experience. So vanilla Hearts of Iron 4 is really good. Vanilla Hearts of Iron 4 without any DLCs might not be, but it's still a pretty good game. There's a reason why it's one of Paradox Interactive's best games. Anyway, that was the 15K special. Thank you everyone for watching. I'll be streaming on tonight, the Friday that's coming out. Probably going to end up playing Russia in the mega campaign that you've been seeing in the background here. This is just a time lapse of what session 4 was, or 3, whatever it was, and yeah, looking forward to seeing you all there, and hope you have a good weekend. Goodbye.